gets nothing effect. Has that one taken away by Troy Hellman. It seems like this could be.
Hello and welcome to the Overwatch League Recap, a talk show focusing on the Overwatch League. I am BlazzinBob, and today I'm joined by a plethora of guests. First off, we have the usual suspects. I play games. How you doing?
Very good, very good. I'm glad to be back in the show. Last week, as I was a little bit sick, and I missed being on the show. I had a lot to say, and I couldn't.
Well, you will definitely get your chance come shortly. And then Mel, always good to have you back. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm all right, I guess. It was a rough weekend, but we'll get over it.
And for the first time on the show, the creator of Broadcast.gg, the one and only MooshuBeef. Welcome to the show, brother.
Hello. Thanks for having me, man. Good to finally be on the show. Known you for like almost a year now, but yeah.
Yeah.
Better late than never.
Yes, definitely. And we always wanted you to get you on, but in the off season, nobody wanted to come on the show because there just wasn't much to talk about. Oh, but hopefully the Overwatch League will help us with that this, come next year. But to start us off, I'm just going to mention our recap producers, Shazir and Thrill. Thank you guys so much for helping us out. Also, just let everybody know the YouTube channel continues to grow, and we appreciate everybody who has gone over there and given us a watch. Recently, we released interviews with Envy, Poco, and Cruz, so you should definitely check those out. But
if you just watch, we don't appreciate you as much as if you like and subscribe. Just saying.
And hit that bell. Yeah, well, we definitely have more people watching than subscribing. We have hundreds of views on some of the videos, but we're up to about 130 subs, so pretty happy with that when we had 12 just a couple weeks ago.
Nice.
Yeah. It's been growing pretty good. But I want to start out, Mushu. I want you to tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Alrighty. So, my name is Alex. I go by MooshuBeef. I like long walks on the beach. I've used this joke twice now, which means I need to get that out of my system. But we're done here.
You should say you like to take cab rides and talk about sharks.
Cab rides and talk about sharks.
Uber rides and talk about sharks in an accent.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that'll be for the After Hours podcast, right? The edition of that. We'll get Golden back in here. But anyways, I did seen it. So I run Broadcast GG. We're a best practices and training platform for esports broadcasting, professional style. And so we have a community of people who are trying to become professional in broadcasting, of competitive games. And so we've done a lot of work with Overwatch, working with Blizzard directly, as well as with the community to put on tier 3 and tier 2 coverage. We last week just started our coverage of Contenders China. And so we're up at 2 a.m. local time for myself and Pacific, all the way up until 8 a.m. is when our broadcasts are. And hopefully soon going to be starting up some open division coverage as well in another region too. So we've been going for a year in about, between open division and Contenders, like 7 seasons or so over the past year. It's been a wild ride, and now we're still here, still getting stuff done, and trying to think about how to reinvent or what's the right next move, right, for us to expand or really hone in on.
Yeah, and it's funny because I first heard about broadcast.gg. I'd kind of heard about it, but first heard more about it on this show, actually. I think it was
Ooh,
episode 34. It was the episode we
I remember
had
that. Yeah.
Mitch Uber on, and Uber talked
Mhm.
about you and shouted you guys out big time. But something a little more interesting that I think a lot of people don't know about broadcast.gg is you guys host, like, is it weekly? Like, it's kind of like our game nights that we host, but it's like
Mhm.
broadcast nights where you guys bring in people that want to get into broadcasting and like allow them to actually cast games. Now, is that right?
Yeah, so that's something we ran for a little over a year. We called it Scrim Nights, and so that was internally for when we had people who showed a lot of promise in casting, aka they have very specific basics done. So, can you speak and cast during a game itself? Not necessarily
No.
that you're perfect. It's actually really challenging. If you mute OWL and like talk over it, even just to yourself, it's like the first time I tried to cast, I was spectating someone in quick play because there was no viewer at the time. In terms of like the custom games were not like something publicly available, so I was expecting someone quick play, and then I was like, so playing Sombra, and it's just like, what do I say? Like, I don't know what to
They
say.
did a
here.
they did a thing.
Yep.
It was
I
minutes
think
of
somebody
silence.
died.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, Torbjorn. Oh, he's going for the kill. Oh, he doesn't quite get it. Right. So, so there's a lot of that kind of stuff early on, and so it's kind of like teams need to be able to have, it really helps them out to have a VOD and of their scrims, and so that they can improve. But then also as casters, we need a lot of stuff to practice on, right? That we can mess up on a little bit here and there, but ultimately give people experience. So that's something we used to run daily for this past year. So we're looking to get it kickstarted back up. We had some folks who were doing some moves, and but yeah, that's something that we definitely want to get going again.
Yeah, definitely.
Very cool.
And with the changes coming, which we'll be talking about later in the show, but the changes coming to season 3, there
Mhm.
just might be a need for a lot more casters. I'm not sure how they're going to do it, but there just might be a need for that. But you're talking about
Maybe.
casting,
Yeah.
and at game nights, I've tried to do it before and had the same thing happen to me there. And I tried it, I don't know, it was like a couple years ago now, but the instant that I first tried it, my respect for casters went from respecting to just being utterly amazed by what they could do.
hmm It takes a lot of concentration. It takes a lot of brain power. And Overwatch already takes a lot of brain power to watch, but to catch everything and distill it down to something where the person speaking to you is telling something more than what's on the screen right now is extremely challenging. And so it's by the end of a cast, you're like, your brain's fried, but if it was a good one, then you feel pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking to your buddy Labasco, and he was
Yeah.
talking about one of the harder things is just remembering the actual name of all of the moves and pulling them out
Mhm.
of your hat immediately. You're like,
Right.
oh yeah, that Sombra thing, the hack. Like,
Right.
it's a lot of information to pull quickly.
Yeah, that
It's
even
a-
happens to me when I'm playing the game. Just like in quick play, I'll be like trying to call out the Sombra and I'll call her like
Yep.
Saria or something. So I
Yep.
can only
Oh, yeah.
imagine the casters try and keep all of that straight. And also in between teams, separating heroes, you go in goats versus goats,
Mhm.
differentiating them. I don't know. It's a lot to
Thank you for all you do, Mushu.
do.
No problem. Thank the casters. We have a good crew. We have a good crew.
Definitely. I think Mel had another question for you too.
Ooh.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, Mushu,
Yep.
why is it that I am your favorite Out Recap host?
Oh, I mean, this one's easy. I really don't think that I have to answer this one, but because I think it's way too obvious. But I think the way that you are able to take things, I mean, you see the games, you see what's going on with it, and you figure out a way to ask questions in a way to where we can really get to the bottom of what's actually important, right? Summarizing, it's almost like asking questions in a good way is an art, right? And I think that's something that you do really well. But on top of that, you're just a really relatable and cool person that everyone loves. So I don't know, easy answer,
Mwah.
easy clap.
That's
I was
so
expecting
mean.
something much more snarky, but I'll take it.
I feel left out though. I complimented your voice early on.
Oh wow. Hey, but look, you're the person who has an even better voice because I mean you can just listen to it, but you also just look at the microphone and just be like, okay, this guy's the real deal. This guy's the real deal.
You're too kind. You're too kind.
We just
And
brought
has a
Mushu
DX
on to
Racer behind him
compliment
too.
all of us.
That's right. Wait, does everyone have DX
Secret
Racers?
plan.
What's going on?
Yeah, we all
Yeah.
have a
Oh
we
my
all
God.
have a DX
This
Racer.
podcast sponsored
DX
by
Racer Club.
I wish, right? DX Racer, if you want to sponsor us, we're here
Yeah, please.
representing.
Or anybody that just wants to send us a free chair, we will definitely use
yeah.
it. Oh, we're gonna get
Really selling out there,
we're,
Bob.
we're gonna get sponsored by
Someone just fell out over
Rubbermaid.
here.
We're gonna have these
Yeah.
little plastic chairs,
Do you lose your Tupperware tops?
and it's so easy to clean.
We have a chair made out of them. That's where they all went.
Sell me
This-
Tupperware that can clean really well in the dishwasher, though. They're printing money at
Doesn't
that
melt.
point.
Yeah.
This
Yeah, it doesn't melt or
episode-
actually dries, right? How much you have to like shake it out at the end? You're like,
That's the
you know,
worst.
Playing Taylor Swift or incorrectly developing a Polaroid picture. Like, no, don't shake it. But
Don't do it. Don't do
It's
it.
wet. Then yeah, shake it.
This
Anyway.
episode brought to you by Sore Behinds.
Oh God.
All right, so tonight we're going to talk a little bit of news. We're going to talk a little bit about the games last week, and we're going to get a little bit of a preview of the upcoming playoffs. So let's just jump right in. Nate Nancer announces officially 2020 geolocation. So we thought that this might not happen, but it is happening. And he even said that they're not going to be in the Blizzard Arena next year in an interview with ESPN today. So pretty
And
cool, right?
He did
Yeah,
say,
I'm excited.
"We'll let you know later what's going to happen with Blizzard Arena." I don't know what that means.
Well, Mel, why don't I throw this to you? What are your biggest takeaways from this news? And were you expecting it this soon?
I mean, I wasn't necessarily expecting it this soon. I didn't know how far along in the process they were of figuring out the logistics because it is a logistical nightmare with scheduling, with home arenas, with teams, getting everybody. And then on top of that, just getting visas and everything to travel to China and Korea and Europe and the States, right? Like, how many issues have we had every season at the beginning of the season with visas? Like, Sideshow's still in Europe, right?
He's
Like,
going to be
come
back
on.
next week.
I know. But I think so. I wasn't sure how far they had gone, and they'd been very closed off about it. They would say, like, it's coming, but they're not giving us any details. And I think they learned a little bit from Overwatch in general, where when you give something and then you don't follow up on it, people rage. But what they didn't realize is that when you give something or you don't give something or you say anything like A, you're going to get raged at. So it didn't really matter. But I think it's really cool. I think it sounded like in the interview that Nate Nanzer was confident that they had figured out all the logistics of it. And I don't think they would have announced it until they did, right? So the fact that he did announce it and they're talking about different schedules, he related it a lot to traditional sports and kind of like baseball, where they kind of go on like a West Coast swing and an East Coast swing. And so I think that is going to be a really effective strategy, right? And teams having their home locations and being able to stay home for a little bit. I'm excited about that. I think they talked about maybe more breaks within the season. So to accommodate for having to travel across country. And yeah, I'm super excited.
What about you,
And teams
iPlay?
will start making money. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, it seems like the pieces are falling in place. I am not super surprised about how soon this is happening just because of the weight of the players in the game, right? And I'm talking about like the actual owners of the teams. For example, for Atlanta, it's the Cox Media Group that owns them. And over here in Atlanta, they basically own every entertainment and like media outlet. Like they're like huge corporation. They have like TBS and Cartoon Network and a bunch of other stuff. They have their own venues over here. So I think it makes sense business wise for these companies to be like, yes, bring him to our homes because a lot of them actually own the venues. They can provide the infrastructure and the ticket sales, go to them too in a way. Because if they're filling up their own places, They're making their own money, and the fan bases are there. Like this year, we've seen watch parties all over the place. Atlanta has a huge fan base, and I know that other cities like Houston have had like over 600 people watch parties, something insane like that. So the time is ripe. Like you better capitalize on this as soon as you can, in my opinion.
What about you, Mushi? You have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think the venues are going to be interesting to see where they go with. Are they building new things? Are there going to be partnerships? Are they how much are you integrating into the local community? And where do they choose to go? Right, not all these places are really known for being places to watch esports, right? Like, I mean, I don't know Atlanta too super well, so you know, it was just mentioned. You're just mentioning that, like, yeah,
It's
Coxsone is
it's not an
right.
esports city. No,
Yeah,
that's for sure. Like over here, you come here to watch football, basketball,
right.
and concerts. That's
Mhm.
specifically like rap, hip hop, and a lot of pop as well.
Right.
But sometimes it's still not in the culture. Like if you go to bars and you try to play Overwatch League, this has happened before. People complain. They're like, "What? Why are you playing? Why are
Yeah.
you playing video games over here? Please change
Yeah.
that," kind of thing. So, I think that it's slowly changing, and then there's an emerging fan base that does want to go there because the times that there have been events, even though they've been scarce, people do come out. It's like they come out of the woodwork, and you're like, "Oh my god, there
Yeah.
are video game fans over here." But yeah, historically, there hasn't been an outlet for that or an outlet that's big enough. So I am curious, like you said, to see what happens when they bring it to the local scene.
Hmm.
And we have seen, like, we've seen Dallas's um, their venue for next year. They've thrown watch parties this year, and it looks like it's built pretty much the same as the Blizzard Arena, like
Hmm.
pretty much to the T. But that could just be Hastro doing that, or it could be stipulations by the league to what the venue has to have, like the overhead screen and all that jazz. There might be stipulations there. I'm not really sure. I haven't heard if they've actually commented on that at all either.
I
But
mean,
They
Nate
haven't.
did say that the team was responsible for their venue and they could use their own venue or they could, use a venue that's already there with other teams playing in it and other things happening in it. So I don't know that there's probably stipulations as to what exactly they have to have in the venue, but I think, he brought up the point of like every football stadium you go to is a little different and every stadium has
Mhm.
their own unique kind of quirks and things like that, like the loudest stadium or this one's, a little bit more underground or this one, so everything's got a little bit different. So I think we're going to see that. I'm sure they have specifications of like what they need and what the broadcast team will need when they go there. But one thing I want to bring up really fast is, do you think that so like up until now, everybody is signed with the team knowing, yes, regionalization is coming, but right now everybody's going to LA, right? How do you
Mhm.
think this will affect teams that say, hey, I'd like to live in Korea, my home country, and play for a team there because I get to spend more time there with my family and whatnot, and I'll travel and I get to see all these other places, and that's really great. But I don't have to completely uproot my life and only see my family when I travel for games, right? So I'm wondering if that will affect, because it's not just across the US, right? It's not like I have to fly from California to Florida. It's like I have to fly from New
Mhm.
York to China, right? Like
Yeah.
Mhm.
that's tough.
yeah, you actually have exactly what I wrote down here while you guys were all talking. I feel bad for Asian players, like especially London.
I was just
I
thinking about
mean,
London.
they're
They
go-
get the short end of the stick because they're
yeah,
going to the complete opposite of their homeland.
and they're gonna be culture shocked once again because they speak the same language in Europe, but it's definitely different, way different from LA, and so that's gonna
Yeah.
be interesting.
And even the
Mhm.
attitude of people in London is going to be a lot different than the people in California.
Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting, but I think London will welcome them with open arms because I'm pretty sure
Oh
they
yeah,
have
yeah, yeah, yeah.
they have quite a bit of people into their team, regardless of if they're European or not. But that's going to bring up another factor when players sign with a team. Their
Yeah.
geolocation is going to be a
Oh,
huge factor.
absolutely. I mean, Paris Eternal is probably having a blast. They're like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
boys, we're
We're
going
gonna go
back
home.
home."
Going
Poor
home.
poor Poco is just looking at them with a little envy, like, "Don't leave me behind. I'm
Is he
going to
though?
Philly."
He's on Philly. He's on Fusion.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
It's kind of like yeah, the Paris Korean team is gonna be upset, but Inouye XL's like whatever, we're the top. I don't care.
Exactly.
Yeah, when we interviewed Poco, we asked him about that, and Poco said that no, he likes it with the Fusion, but he does like to win against Paris. He said that's
Oh, I
the
bet.
best thing.
You get me a chef in the house, I'll be enjoying life.
Chef Heidi
Yeah.
from the
Yeah,
Short
and-
Fusion.
and
Can't
Fraggy.
complain too
MVP.
much.
Right?
Yeah,
Then-
exactly. You got Fraggy, Comcast
Got
money.
Frag.
What more do you need?
All right. Well,
Pool in the
does-
backyard?
does anybody else have anything they want to add about the home venues?
The only other thing is that Nate did say that Overwatch League would still be responsible for all the broadcasting. So they're not going to let the teams take care of that, which I think we all kind of hypothesized, but it was stated. So I think that's good. But the teams are responsible for their venues and they will start to make more money by selling tickets and selling, concessions. We all know how fun concessions are at a regular traditional sports event that you make a lot of money.
Yeah, they
For
might
your-
actually get beer, and then they could make a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd be
even
into it.
popcorn, you're like 10 cents to make it and like $7 popcorn, right?
Yep. Well, I think that it's gonna be a rocky road for 'em, but boy, it's gonna be a fun ride for us. And I think there's going to be so many opportunities to see live games. We're going to get to talk to all the fans of the show that get to go see the games. Hopefully, they'll send us photos and everything else. It should be a really good time. So I
wait,
am
there
excited.
was one more thing.
Oh, go.
He did mention in the interview that they did not anticipate adding in any more teams in 2020. He
I did hear
said that
Mhm.
yeah, that they were
Mhm.
focusing so much on the regionalization and getting everybody in their home cities that he's like, it's not off the table. They're constantly talking to new people about new teams, but it's most likely just going to be these 20 going to their new
Yeah.
places.
Interesting.
It'll
That means that
basically.
if anybody wants to get in, they're gonna have to pay up a ton of money so that they're like, okay, fine, we'll let you in.
I don't think
And
it's
prove
just
that
about
they have
that.
what they
have-
need.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to prove that they have the infrastructure required for it. And I think that's the biggest thing. They're open to it if somebody has the proper infrastructure. So maybe they might even get in cheaper at a bargain rate if they already have the infrastructure in place. Just
And the interest, I
spitballing.
think, is a big thing, right? Like the OWL teams right now, you can gauge the interest by the watch parties, by the fan engagement, right? But for somebody coming in new, depending on where they're coming from, they're going to question potentially, like, do you have the market to support this? Like, you would be a brand new team, not a team that's already gathered interest over the last year or two, waiting for your team to come home. Like, you're brand new. So is that even a possibility for you?
Yeah, and at this point, there's enough volume of teams that the league seems pretty full, and I think that you can call it an international league at this point. I wish there was at least one Latin American team and maybe a couple more European teams, but it's looking quite good, especially with the 4 China teams, 2 Korean teams. It's a good representation of the East there.
One Korean team.
1 Korean team. Well, I
I mean, there's a lot of
Korea,
Korean teams.
London
They're
and
just playing out of-
Excelsior. Yeah.
They're just playing out of China, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3
Or outside,
Chinese, 1 Korean.
4 Chinese.
2
4 Chinese.
Oh, it is 4 Chinese. Shit.
Come on, people.
Damn.
5
Yeah.
European, 2
Yeah,
Australian.
right?
2
There's actually
European.
nobody in the States. Sorry, guys.
All right. Well, something that it might be interesting to Washington Justice fans is they just got themselves a great player in Arc. Arc traded from NYXL over to the Washington Justice. I'm just happy for Arc. What do you guys think? Anybody jump in?
Oh
All
my
right.
gosh, Ark melts my heart.
Yeah,
Well-
he's a actually I'd be curious to hear more like why you feel like why he melts your heart. But I want to throw in that I've said this before. I don't know if necessarily to you folks here, but I think Arc can do more for the league in its public perception than Jake can. But I'm really curious why they've not been
Get
interviewing
out
him
of
more.
here.
All right, the reason why I know. Wait, you're not even an Outlaws fan, right? You're
Yes,
don't you cheer
yes,
for
I
the
am.
Fuel?
Oh, she is. That's
Oh
like
wait,
her
you
team.
are. Oh wait, I thought you were a Fuel fan for some reason.
Bob's a Fuel fan.
That's me. Yep.
Okay, I mixed it up. Okay, but Arc is the first. I'm trying to think if there's any other Korean esports athlete. I'm just gonna call him an esports athlete. You might get some YouTube hate for that. I'm sorry, Bob. But but like his English is so good, and he's able to reveal emotion, right? So it's like that's just
Oh,
something
big
that
time.
normally the Korean players, they just don't show any emotion or just don't seem like interested in the game, or just like they win and then it's like they're confetti and they're just like
I think of like
Yep.
Jonak. Nothing impresses that
Yeah.
man.
right.
When
Exactly. Yeah.
in stage one,
No, this
at
is
the
my story.
press
This is why I
conference.
love Ark.
Okay,
Let
sorry.
me tell.
All
Let me
right, yeah,
tell.
go for it. Yeah.
Okay, so stage one, the press conference, we like ask him like how it is, being in LA as opposed to being in their home, Korea. And everybody answers, Jonak, Sabiobi. They're like, oh yeah, it's fine. We love it. And it gets to Ark and he's like, I just miss my family a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of hard to be so far away. And I'm like, oh my God. And he's so well spoken. He articulates very well. He's a super sweet person and he knows the game very, very well. He's very
Yeah.
good at the game. So I love him.
And not that you
Agreed.
mentioned that, I remember that interview when they're having the group interview and we were all there asking them questions. A lot of them were very short, like kind of like one answer thing. And like you said, Musha, very like uninterested. Like they were like, oh yeah, this is just kind of like what we do every day, easy peasy kind of attitude.
Mhm.
But Ark was the one who then would elaborate. He was the one who would actually go more in depth and be and like you said, he had super good English too. So he was like the communicator for that team, and he revealed much more than everybody else combined in that room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not sure why they don't utilize him as, this kind of like
That's what I'm saying.
person of, yeah. We should
Sorry,
get
go
him
ahead.
on
Yeah.
an interview.
No, go for it.
Yeah, and every press I've talked to has just enjoyed interviewing him. I mean, he's just a good dude, and he's a great player. And I really think he was. We haven't seen him in this stage, and we haven't seen Jonak as dominant as Jonak was. So I still think that he was a big reason for that. But do you think it's going to improve the Washington Justice? What do you guys think?
Anything improves the Washington Justice. So yeah.
Ooh.
At
I'm
this
just
point, yeah, they
kidding.
can use some extra help.
I
Yeah,
think
so go ahead.
he's
Go ahead, Mel.
well, I think he's very good. From what I've heard, this deal has been in the works for a while. So like that could have been part of the reason he wasn't playing in NYXL games is because this deal was kind of on the table already and they were trying to figure out the logistics. So I think if any Korean player is going to mesh with a roster of some non-Korean players, right? Because Washington isn't a fully Korean roster. I think it's Arc, and I think Arc can take them to that next level. They needed something. They were showing minimal improvements each week, right? So they needed something, and I think Arc can help get them their attitude and performance.
Yeah, you were going to say Mushu?
Yeah, so I think what's so interesting about this meta that we're in right now is that there's so much pressure on, or let's say this, that Lucio can earn your team so much opportunity. Like in Goat's meta, it's actually really difficult to create opportunity for your team. And so Lucio is one of those people that if you are able to play the hero really well, you create opportunities for your team that they can capitalize on that are not very high risk for your team to follow through on. And so that's the difference that I'm seeing between really good teams, the teams that understand goats, and teams that don't understand goats, is their Lucio play. Where do they play? What is the manner in which they do it? And how does a team understand the decision tree after which Lucio gets a good boop or doesn't get a good boop? So I think I really don't remember Arc playing Lucio. In fact, we were talking about before. I was like, wait, does Arc play Lucio? Because I looked at
I'm
a
not
previous
sure
interview,
either.
like an AMA, where he talked about Lucio was his hero that brought him into doing support, right? So he definitely understands the hero, but I think just in terms of on stage play, I really don't know how experienced he is on that. But in addition to that, we're just going to see some Lucio nerfs come into play. Lucio nerfs as well as Zenyatta nerfs for the next patch. And if we're going to get the Baptiste patch for stage 2, that is when it's going to get really interesting. And I think, what Arc is bringing, of course, is the, as a leader, he seems to be the one that is at least, behind the squad for NYXL during their success, was someone that could gel together and like conform to the team and make it better, right? They don't need to play around him. He can be very adaptive. And so that's what I'm looking for in Washington. And just looking at their games, I really don't think they are that bad of a team. I think they just don't have a good shot caller. I think it comes down to their communication in game and understanding, like, what do they actually want to do? How do you actually win? I think between whether it's the coaching or their in-game decision making, they are like way, way behind other teams. Whereas their individual play, maybe not so much, but it just exposed so much more when teams know how they want to win.
Yeah, and I think that I just don't know if he's going to be able to keep Janice alive, and that's where I don't know if anybody can keep Janice alive at this point.
I think he's made a ton of changes. Janice is where he's not charging, he's not leading charges as much, at least during the Mayhem game. Was kind of like a more bright spot, but Janice is getting killed very early on because of other Lucios. Like their Lucio doesn't know how to play counter Lucio. That's the problem with Fozix right now. I think Fozix plays for Washington, right? I think he's
he does, yeah, but
yeah.
I think he plays their Zen more, doesn't he?
Oh wait, who I forget.
Well, there's Fozix, Guido, and
Guido. Oh wait, no, Guido plays Zen, I think. Yeah, so whoever their apparently a notable Lucio player is, I'm sorry, I'm there, so they would destroy me in 1v1. But yeah, it's like I actually put it a lot more on the support around around Janus than him himself. He when he's leading with charges and whatnot, that's on him. But if the team can't play around and support Janus into where the other team is going, like, all right, let's pick up Janus. Whoop. Right, there's ways to avoid getting booped out of place, getting shield bash, because the boop leads to a shield bash, leads to a stun, leads to you insta die, right? Yeah. And then your whole team just dies.
The boop can set up so many plays. Not only like booping him out of position, but enabling your diva bomb or the shatter to go through. Just the displacement alone is Goat's kind of like biggest weakness. Right? If you can't position yourself right, or if you're in the position wrong, you can capitalize quite a bit.
And he's kind of like the unsung hero, right? Like he's like the one that doesn't get the credit.
Yeah, I'm curious though. Maybe you guys know more about this than I do, but Arc seemed a little bit unpopular when he was in NYXL, and sometimes by their own community, right? I think I've heard a couple of times where Arc was getting a little bit of flack from the community. I always thought he gelled really well with the team, and him and Jonak were always a very dynamic duo, kind of like an iconic duo, especially in season 1. What do you guys think he was getting so much flack in New York Excelsior?
Honestly, I just think Mercy players across the board got flack last season, although it was completely unjustified in my opinion, because teams with bad Mercies like MooshuBeef, when they had Dak playing Mercy, they looked like an entire team of feeders. I mean, it's just the truth, There was a lot of Mercy players took a lot of flack, but I mean, I don't have a better answer for that. Maybe somebody else does, but
I think you'll notice when the way the main support was played in season 1 is that you notice when they're doing poorly and you don't notice when they're doing well, right? And so I don't know if I caught wind of as much flack on Arc. I think the only reasons why you would think poorly of him was that yeah, there's just like he can't save if he couldn't save the day, and it was like, oh, other mercies are a lot better than Arc, right? So it's like it becomes a comparative thing to where it's like, oh, he didn't deliver, he wasn't clutch in that moment.
Mm.
Whereas like I really like if I'm looking at what, if I'm trying to remember back to season 1 and what you expected out of your mercy, it was to stay alive, it was to, you know, get the right reses, be at the right place at the right time. And so there's a lot of ways to be I guess there were some ways to be clutch, but it was really more about like with um with Arc, yeah, just like you're gonna notice when he's not doing well versus when he is doing well versus Jonak, who is like lighting up the kill feed, right? And
Right.
so yeah, I mean I don't really detect I don't recall any major drama on that front, but certainly could see people feeling that way.
I guess it does make sense if you are the support in the shadow of Jonak. It doesn't matter
Right.
how good you are, you're just not gonna look that good.
Exactly.
Yep. And it is something to take note that Washington definitely had a very hard schedule in stage 1.
Yeah.
Moving on to a little bit of just a little bit of news about jerseys. The jerseys sales came in. The top 7 jerseys. Number 1, of course, DeFred.
Let's go, dude.
Let's go, dude.
By a lot too. Number 2, Jonak. Number 3, Surefour, who doesn't play at the moment. Number 4, Gushwe, who only plays part of the time. Number 5, Giri, who is currently riding the bench too. Number 6, Carpe, and number 7, Poco. I thought this was interesting. Just the players that people latch onto
Yeah.
aren't always the Surefour starters.
Listen,
Dude, where's
Nice,
the,
nice pun there. Hey,
You like that?
I like it. I like it.
Where's the Jinmu jersey? I feel like
I feel like that
definitely
one's
up there.
going up. I feel like that
it
one's
took
going up
a
right
little
now.
it took a little bit of time for people to accept it, and then
Fake it a
they
little bit,
started
but I feel
watching
like
and they were
like
like,
Bob is saying,
okay.
he's
Chengdu
increasing
went-
his sales.
Chengdu
Yeah.
went from Chengdu Resident Sleeper to Chengdu PogChamp.
Yeah.
Right?
So
Like,
yeah.
I don't even care if you win. I love watching you. So it's fine. But I think there's more to love about jerseys than winning. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kind
Yeah,
of.
so-
definitely.
One thing that's super interesting here, I'm pleasantly surprised by, is the Gushue jersey. This has to be from World Cup, right? So
Mhm.
I'm going to be very annoying in my in saying that I discovered Gushue before most people had even heard of him. So we saw him basically try to solo carry a team in China's contenders called LGD Gaming, and he couldn't. But he was like, he would be super clutch. You remember the way that Gesture was like just absolutely destroying people in season 1 with his Winston Primal Rages, right? He would just do Primal Rage techs that you just would never know about. That was Gushue in Chinese contenders, where it was like the fight would be lost. They should lose, but they don't because of Gushue, or they narrowly lose it despite the fact that Gushue popped off. So, and then that carried over. I was really, really happy to see that carried over to World Cup as well, where we saw like Gushue, Crystal. I'm not sure if, let's see, who else was there?
Oh yeah, on Team China,
Yeah.
they did super good
Yeah.
in the World Cup.
Yeah, like they
Mhm.
surprised, and it was like, I mean, they were set up for success in that like Shanghai had gone 0-40 right in the regular season. So people were like, oh, China, lol.
Right.
And like, oh my god, why would you have 4 Chinese teams? And then like, yeah, they popped off. Like they did really well. So I'm really happy to see that carried over to the jersey sales. But I also might suspect that because it is Hangzhou Spark, who is the player that you've heard of, and you want the pink jersey.
Right.
Gushue. So
Well,
that's-
Right.
that, and we know that China has a huge fan base. Like last season, even though the Shanghai Dragons were last and they wouldn't win a game, they did have some of the largest sales, if not the largest, right, out of all of the
Yeah.
teams.
At some point,
Um,
it was the largest. I don't know if it ended at the
It ended
largest.
like that, but yeah, at some point it was like that. So we know that the Chinese have a huge,
Mhm.
huge fan base, and it seems like they found their representative with Gushue over here.
Yeah, no, if Gushue wasn't on a team that spoke all Korean, he'd probably have the starting spot full time by now, but
Yep.
he's there.
All right. Well, moving on to some games. So Paris needed to win two games this last weekend to secure a playoff spot. They won 2-1 against the Justice, but lost 1-3 against the Fusion. Did you guys take anything away from these from these two games? Anything? I mean, I took away that the Zarya play is just god awful on Paris, and
That's what they're really struggling with, right? Like the Zarya play, then they're swapping in and out, so then their communication gets altered, and then play styles are different, and they just haven't, like, they came out strong. I think they played weaker teams, but they came out strong, and then they just couldn't get their rhythm back up, and it's sad, but Soon and Shadowburn, neither of them excelled on Zarya. I don't know if that was completely their fault or the rest of the team kind of not meshing together well. We know that Goats is a team-oriented composition, so it's never one person's fault for winning or losing, right? Like it's never one person that shines, it's never one person that is throwing. And I think they've got other issues, and it could have been some of the just like downfall, right? Maybe they couldn't handle the, not being as good as they came in, everybody thinking they were going to be.
Yeah, the cruise is a feeder thing actually has plagued him for weeks now. And I don't, the dog man talked about that in an interview on Tactical Crouch. That, he just, like, he didn't expect that to cause Cruz so much, so much hassle and basically bullying. And I wonder if that's affecting Cruz because Cruz has not looked good since. What do you guys think? I play Mushu?
Yeah, I mean, I'll continue on my love for Lucio and Goats comp. I think Neptuno is exceptional. And so there's a couple things that plagued Philadelphia Fusion, I should say, not Fusion's the player. Was Boombox being sick, and then Neptuno, I think, having an injury and then coming back. And so since he's been back, it's been they've looked a lot better. And so I think Philly still is going to finish like third, fourth overall in the playoffs. But if you just look at Neptuno, like the thing to really watch out for, and like Goats is so hard to watch. I've watched like thousands of hours of Overwatch, and to where it's like I was working on being a caster, I was working on like doing producing and make sure I'm spectating the right people. And so it's like, even for me, Goats is extremely difficult to watch and knowing what to look for. And so I think what in Overwatch League, especially because it was the new meta, I would say contenders players are definitely had a better understanding of this meta than Overwatch League, but I think they've since like caught up, of course. Is looking at the Lucio play. What is the Lucio doing? Where are they positioning? And if you look at where Neptuno is versus what Cruz is trying to do, I would say they're doing the same play style. They need to be creating opportunities for the rest of their team. So that's why sometimes it'd be like all of a sudden Reinhardt is out of position. Like, why are they there? They're not bots, right? It's because they're being CC'd into a bad position. And I think Neptuno does an extremely good job of that. So once the team fight is already going, it's like your team gets split up even more so, right? There'll be someone who goes behind, Neptuno will push you even further behind the rest of the team. And then Philly will fall back and kill the other person, right? D.Va jumps in, you boop him even further, like towards them, right? Away from the rest of his team. They'll kill the D.Va first, then they'll continue on, right? These are some things like macro-wise I see Philly doing really well. And that's all they really had to do well versus Paris, unfortunately. Cruz even had an unfortunate time in Rialto. He like booped them off of the high ground and he got too many people. So it was just like the entire team just all of a sudden were booped forward, and then they just got killed. And he's like, "What do you guys want me to do?" And Uber goes, "Cruise control." And I was like, "Hey, nice pun." Uber is cruise control, but it's like, yeah, it was. I was like, "Damn, man, yeah, I want your brain." But yeah, so like in terms of what Cruz is doing, I don't see as much of an issue with it. I think I just see more that the team can't capitalize on the opportunities that he's making, and he's not generating as many opportunities for his team as some of the top Lucio players are.
I think when teams are struggling too, everybody tries to be the hero, which I don't think is the answer in the Goats meta, right? So you see more aggressive Rhine play, you see more aggressive Lucio play, because they're trying to make that play to make their team win, and it's actually, I think, hurting them.
Yeah, Paris they seem to be like the best of the worst, right? Like if you're looking at the standings, they're definitely doing better than Los Angeles, Florida, and Washington right now. But that's not to say much. I think that they understand goats. I think that they know how to play it. But they, like you say, they are just falling short because they're not being able to capitalize on those opportunities. Like some of the teams that have cleaned up goats a little bit more look like. You can definitely tell, like when you look at Vancouver or New York play goats, they look so clean, so well positioned, so intentional about every single thing that they do. When you're looking at teams like Paris, you can tell that they understand the composition, but they're a little rough around the edges and they miss certain opportunities. They're putting themselves at odds in certain places. But when you're looking at Washington, Florida, and Los Angeles, there's like these guys are not even playing goats. When they're going against some of the other teams, they're just getting demolished.
Yeah.
They should have embraced it like Chengdu.
Well, and next on the list was the Washington Justice, but we're going to skip over that since we had so much of a conversation about them earlier. But I will say they came into the week, lost 1-2 to Paris, but then won 3-2 against the Mayhem, securing their first win in the Overwatch League and Otto's first win in the Overwatch League. I think he said it was his 43rd game. It was 40 something.
38th, I think. I think it was 38th.
38th? Okay. But yeah,
Wow.
so yeah, that many
That's
losses.
incredible.
And so he got to
Yeah.
finally win. But let's move on to the London Spitfire versus the Seoul Dynasty. The winner was going to take the the playoff spot most likely. Dynasty has never won against the Spitfire. What'd you guys think about this match? I'll start with iPlay.
Dynasty is looking a lot better this season. I'm quite surprised and happy for them because honestly, they're one of the biggest disappointments of last season. Like a team that looks so good and so ominous, and I was so ready to watch, just kind of falling out of favor like that and
Yeah.
into oblivion. That like they really fell down low. So I'm glad that have been able to regroup. I don't know if going back to Korea really regenerated their spirits or what, but it's looking good. And I'm liking Ryu Jae-hong again, man. The few times that he pulls out the Ana, like always, is just man, he's a pleasure to
The
watch.
crowd
Ana.
goes wild.
Yeah, and you can tell he's like a fish in the water. He belongs in that hero.
Oh yeah, 100%.
What do you think, Mel?
I don't know. I think I was really happy. I saw some interview with the Spitfire or with the Dynasty on, what they were most excited about here, whether it was making the playoffs or beating London, and they're like, definitely beating London. That was the one thing we wanted to do. We didn't really care as much about the playoffs. And I'm like, that makes sense, right?
It's personal here.
Yeah, it was. It's kind of like London and Outlaws, right? Like London's never beat the Outlaws, despite the fact that they beat everybody else. Outlaws can't beat anybody else, but they can beat the London. So whatever. We take it. But I think it's good for Dynasty. Like good for them. I love that they're making it back. I think, hey, maybe Ana will be in the meta this next season or this next stage, and we get to see some more of that from Ryu Jae-hong. But I will say his Zen has gotten much better as well.
It has, yeah.
I mean, it was a little lackluster last season. Not that it was bad, it just wasn't flashy.
It was no Jonak.
It wasn't Jonak, right? But it was, it was good. It was sustainable. But I'm just excited to see Dynasty win. I'm glad they're in the playoffs. I want to see what they can do.
Spitfire, on the other hand, though, is looking more like Dynasty was looking last season. What do you think, Mushu?
They're looking more like Philly, right? Like the inconsistency of
Yeah.
Philly, where it's like, oh, we're really good. Wait, we forgot how to play this week.
Yeah. So this for me was the match, the most important. Actually, I guess Boston Dallas is probably the most important match. But sorry, Bob. But in terms of London versus Seoul, if I'm going to be spicy and not pick Vancouver for taking it all, I'm going to pick Seoul. I'm going to go on record and say I think Seoul's going to take it all, and it's because
You
London
think
versus
so?
Seoul. watch this, watch a couple of minutes of the VOD again, and remember. So I don't know if you guys play Super Smash Brothers or any fighting
Yeah, a
game.
little bit.
I do.
If you're any good, you are looking at not only your own character, you're looking at the opposite, whoever your opponent is, right? It's actually like more important to see what they're doing than for you to see what you're doing. And like I'll like look at my character and be like, I'm jumping. I'm like doing exactly what my inputs are supposed to be doing. And like that's kind of what London's doing. It's like they're going into the fight and being like, we're gonna do this, then we're gonna do this, then we're gonna do this. Like this is probably number 20th place all the way through like 7th place of Overwatch League right now, which is that like we're gonna run the set play, we're gonna do this, and this happens and this, right? It's like all mapped out in their head of what they're gonna do. But it's like, what if they do something else? What if they do this? What if they do that? And so I think this match just showed what does a team that is more one-dimensional in the GOAT's composition do versus a team that is thinking 2 steps ahead. And that's what Soul is able to do. And so I want to direct us to specific things in that, like with Prophet's bubbles, right? He's like using them on cooldown. He's trying to build up energy so he can get grav, right? But when that cooldown is down and Soul sees it, they were going to jump on you, right? Even down to who is Eska hacking, right? If you're hacking, actually most Sombras right now are hacking Zarya, right? So that they don't get grav soon enough. And they can't use their bubbles, right? There's just so much value you get out of it because you get the grav and then you get the shielding for when you have that bubble up, which contributes to your ultimate charge, right? So that's huge. But then I think Jessica is the biggest thing. I think he is the best Lucio right now in Overwatch League. And based on like how they played against London, I haven't been able to catch all of Soul's games, but they just look so good right now. And I think it's because of Jessica. And I talked about earlier, why is Lucio play so important? It's to offer opportunities for your team. But Jessica makes so many opportunities for like he's booping Gesture out of place. Like, how do you make Gesture look bad? Right. And I think he has looked pretty bad this season, right? He's definitely middle of the pack, but he just looked like he looked trash. He looked so bottom of the barrel. And it's not because he's bad. It's because of Jessica like booping him out of place. And then counter to that too, it's like them going into fights. They know exactly. This is getting back to the Super Smash Bros. Analogy. They're looking at what the other person's doing, and then they instantly know, like, oh, they're gonna try to boop me out of place. I'm gonna bubble the Reinhardt, and after they boop, the entire team is going to be rushing at me. This is from Soul's perspective. All of London's going to be rushing at me. They think that the Reinhardt's going to get booped forward, and they're going to try to smash the rest of my team. Well, I'm just going to go on. I'm going to sidestep it. I have speed from Jessica, and I'm going to sidestep this Reinhardt shield and shatter them too. So it's like it's that thinking 2 steps ahead. And I'm really excited to see which I think will be, unless the seeding deceives me, I think it's going to be Soul, Vancouver in the end, and I think that Soul can do it. So there you go.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Maybe.
I think Soul. I
like
think
it.
Soul finally learned how to play with Fisher too. I think Soul
Yes.
was trying to play their game, and Fisher was playing his game, and it wasn't meshing, right? But all of a sudden, this last week, they looked much more cohesive, and they played a more Fisher style goats, right?
Mhm.
And that I think helped them win the game.
Yeah, I think the coaching staff put Fisher in his place. I think the benching last week was really to let Fisher know that we can win without
We can
you.
beat the Washington Justice without you. I
It's
mean, I don't know.
like either way, like it's. I think that just kind of showed Fisher like, okay, it's kind of like what happened with Effect in the Dallas Fuel last season, stage 4. Like Effect left, Dallas Fuel won more games than they had won in stage 1, 2, and 3. But I think it's weird that London has had so little success with such a good Sombra player. I don't think that their Sombra goats is stacking up to the other handful of teams that run it well in the league. And I think that's been a little bizarre for me, but
I
whatever.
think they have the same problem that Houston has. Their Sombra is their Brigitte, right? So you switch out your Sombra and then other people have to swap, or you go without a Brigitte instead of without a Diva, right? So it just gets complicated.
Yeah, it
And
definitely
then
is
you've
more
got people
complicated.
playing roles that they're not as comfortable with. But I think that's where if Sombra players aren't Diva players, your Sombra is less effective.
Yeah, true. And Dallas Fuel and who else? I think Dallas Fuel is the only one that actually has that awesome little RCK player that plays Diva
Mhm.
and Sombra at a very high level.
Yeah. Envy is
There's
another
other,
person to look for in
yeah.
Oh
Toronto.
yeah, Envy. Yeah,
Yeah, and
Envy. Thank you.
Michelle on Soul as well. But I think Michelle is going to be if they do lose at all, it's going to be because they can't do their Sombra goats well.
For sure.
Well, let's move on to one of the most important games, at least for me, of the weekend: Fuel versus the Uprising. Fuel
Ooh.
comes out of the gate hot, going 2-0, and then
Mm-hmm.
gets reversed swept and loses
Mm-hmm.
3-2. I mean, you can call this whatever you want, but this was a choke in my opinion. Let's start with Mushu. What do you think?
All right. This is my other favorite thing that I noticed from this week, or just from this game specifically, right? Is and we've seen over this stage one, how is Sombra supposed to be played, right? When you do your Sombra goats, where you're replacing, like Mel said, the replacing your diva and you're putting in Sombra. How should that be working? Well, your diva is playing in a very similar way, and so hope it's okay I'm mentioning, because I learned a ton from this video. But Volmo has he done some studies on Toronto, on Envy specifically, or like on Kings Row. How are they using Sombra? And so there's this whole idea around like rotations, right? You always hear about rotations. What does that mean? It means it's where your team is operating in just two different locations, right? You have this group of five, and then you have the Sombra as well. If your Sombra's touching a point, you force the enemy team to contest, right? Then your Sombra can go out. And your five, maybe you get a 5v6 into an advantageous position to where someone's being caught out. And I think this is what Boston adapted to and learned over time, which is that RCK's role is to hack a key target, and then do as much damage as you can to get his ultimate, and then scram, right? And you get out of there, right? So whether it's in that moment to where Sombra leaves, you're in a 5v6, and maybe someone is caught out of position, you just immediately destroy that person. And I think that's where, if Fusions is not there, Boston does not make this comeback at all, right? Is because we keep hearing how vocal he is. It's not like a guess of us being like, oh, his communications. Like we've heard him plenty of times where it's like he is the dominant voice there, right? And
Yeah,
they're
he
all
never
following where
stops
Fusions
talking.
wants to go.
It's just blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like me right now. So I apologize for that. But
No.
So yeah, the key things I'm seeing is that the Sombra has a very specific role, which is you're supposed to split the team. But Dallas wasn't playing clean enough everywhere else to where when the Sombra gets out of there, the rest of the team doesn't die too. So Boston was able to pick him off. And in the times when EMP were there, Boston would just die, right? They wouldn't commit any ultimates. They knew that they're gonna lose every EMP fight pretty much. We're not gonna try to save it. And that's what they did, right? And then the fights where there weren't EMPs, they could take him.
Yeah, and boy, Aim God just had RCK's number in the second half, man.
Wowie.
Jeez. I feel like coaches watched that first map and just got on it and just looked at RCK's positioning in every map coming up and were like, just be looking at this corner, just be looking at this corner, because he was catching him with some right clicks that just like, how did you know he was there?
I think they
Mhm.
committed too long to the Sombra as well. I think the Sombra is really good, but once the team figures it out, I think you have to switch back. And I
a
don't
good
think
point.
Fuel did that. I think if Fuel would have done that, they could have taken this match. If they put RCK on Diva, map 4 and 5, maybe not even map 5, but they put RCK back on Diva, I think they win this match because Boston wasn't as prepared for that, right? And they can outplay them in that way, but they didn't till the very end.
Did
The
you have
thing
any
that
takeaways?
Yeah, one of the things that stood out to me a lot was in Boston was Fusions. Fusions is like that team's rock, man. When they were 2-0 down the gutter, everyone in that team was kind of quiet and kind of like looking down a little bit, except for Fusions. Like if you looked at that man at that moment, he was on that mic, just like going to town on his team. He was just like talking, probably screaming at that point, but he was on fire. Like you could see the fire in his eyes. That man wanted the win, and I think that he carried his team morale with him. He was like the true tank frontline that that team needed at that time. And to keep that attitude when you're losing like that and the rest of your team is kind of down like that. I think it's incredible. And he's mentioned it before that he's here to show that he's the best tank of the league. His own words. He's tweeted this out. And I think that he's going for it. And props to that guy. I think that he's a huge asset. Boston made the right decision doing the push to bring him from contenders.
He's the most talented cheerleader in the league.
Nice.
I don't know. Maybe Dogman takes that. But speaking of Dogman, let's
No.
move to Atlanta. Atlanta
Saving the
needed
best
to
for last,
win.
baby.
Yeah, needed to win both games for a guaranteed spot in the playoffs. They go against the Chengdu Hunters the first game and they lose 3-2. Then they move on and they win against the Outlaws in a 3-1 match. Looked pretty good for the Outlaws on the 1st map, but let's talk about the Chengdu matchup. Who wants to jump into that one? Because that one, I mean, unreal. Like Chengdu is impressing me to no end, and who knew you could play Pharah on this many maps in this meta?
I mean, who knew you could play so many heroes on this many maps in this meta? I love Chengdu. I love you.
Yeah, Chengdu is doing some amazing things. I'm very conflicted about this match because even though my Atlanta Reign lost, it was a very entertaining match. I had a lot of fun watching it. In fact, we had a full discussion on the Chengdu 222 earlier today on Omnic Lab, just full focus on this composition because it's a very fun comp, both to watch and to play. We were actually playing it earlier this weekend with you, Bob, and DB and some other guys. And it's just fun.
We were
Forget
attempting.
about me.
Yeah, we're attempting. But that being said, I think that Atlanta got caught with their pants down. I think that they did not know how to counter this composition. And it's mostly because nobody plays this, right? Nobody else is playing this, so no team really has any practice with it. We've heard this from Overwatch League. And it's true. Chengdu is playing their own microcosm of games over there, and people have to adapt to their own meta because they're not adapting or conforming to like the meta. And they do bring goats when they absolutely have to, but if they don't, they're not playing goats, which I think is super super cool.
And the fact that they can scrim against any team and play against goats, and no team can scrim against any other team to play Chengdu style, right? Like they're just so exciting to watch, and I love the fact that they have stuck to their guns, right? They've played a little bit of 3-3, but mostly they're pulling out what they want to pull out, right? And they're like, fine, we can play 3-3 to win this map, right? But we saw them last week take the Titans like for a loop, where you saw the Titans going on like Hamster and Pharah and Widow, and you're like, what is happening? And Chengdu just does that to teams.
You're making the best team of the league having to like step out of their comfort zone because that's how much pressure you're putting with your comp.
Yeah, they're like, I don't even know what to do right now.
And that's exactly it, right? What are your win conditions in goats? You dislodge the Reinhardt and then kill him and then go on the rest of the team. What if there's no Reinhardt? What if, who do you focus? Do you focus on the Hamster as he's slamming in? Then he uses his E, his adaptive shield. Then he rolls out and then you're getting killed by fire rockets. And then, oh, by the way, you're getting hacked too. So there's so many distractions and so many things to where, yeah, this is not how, like the win conditions of goats, this composition that Chengdu runs is one that is meant to be annoying, is meant to take time, and is meant to kill you slowly and with like there's just so many opportunities to where you could get killed, right? And so that's where Chengdu is working. The crazy thing about it is that they are staying alive throughout doing this, right? They're cycling through. They understand their ability cooldowns enough to where it's like, honestly, if you look at the way Chengdu plays, it's extremely patient. It's just the reason why it looks so crazy is because there's just stuff coming in from every corner. There's projectiles from every corner. Yeah.
Right, like goats is supposed to be so centralized, right? You can see exactly what's going on the on the playing field by looking at like one person, right? You can see everybody else. And with Chengdu, it's like you've got a Widow and a Pharah and a Lucio and a Wrecking Ball, and you're just like, where is everybody?
Yeah. So who do you focus? And it's like and they know how to play the map terrain Especially like I just think back to their attack on. I think they played a Numbani, unless I was thinking of Guangzhou Charge.
They did.
not being
They
there.
did play it on Umbani almost exclusively up until the third point where they swapped to
Yeah.
go.
Which is nuts, right? I think you get. I guess it's the momentum,
worked.
right?
It worked. Atlanta could not stop him up until
Yeah.
the third point.
I would have
Yeah.
loved to have seen Chengdu playing the way they're playing right now throughout the entirety of stage one, because I think their record would have been a lot better. Because they
I will
didn't switch
say-
to goats
Yeah.
until like last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been doing a little bit more goats, and I will say their goats is not that strong. Once they swapped to goats, Atlanta
They
was able
went
to kind of
toe
control
in
them.
toe with Vancouver Titans
No.
mere goats.
No,
Yes, they did.
I plays right though. Their goats is definitely not as strong.
It's not as strong as their
It's
other
so
comp.
much stronger than we initially thought, though. Like, you guys have to
Mhm.
give them credit. They went 3-2 with the Vancouver Titans 7-0, playing mere goats a lot of the time. And
It's not a bad goats. Like their goats definitely would still beat like the bottom goats of the league, I think. But that being said, for example, in the Rialto map, they gave Atlanta no chance. They basically just swept them up until the third point, where
Mhm.
goats becomes incredibly strong, and only then was Atlanta able to hold them. And Chengdu did end up swapping to Ghost at that point because they realized there's no hope in us keeping doing this composition. And
Mhm.
they were stopped hard in their tracks. Atlanta, that's where they set their foot. They're like, this is our territory. This is what we know. This is what we can play. We're not going to let you guys through anymore. But the rest of the time, when they were in their crazy Farah Hammond Diva composition, Atlanta had no business there. It was like they were lost in what to do.
Yep.
Yeah. I wonder
But-
how much of the strength of their goats comes from the fact that if they aren't playing goats a lot and then they switch to it, right? Do teams forget how to? You have to adjust. You have to have a
Right.
huge mental shift, right? And how you're playing against it. So I wonder if that delta is contributing to their goats looking strong against Atlanta.
I think their
it
heart's just not
also-
in it when they play goats.
It
Mm.
It's
also
like, I can't do it.
with them not playing it at all for the first couple weeks, I just wonder if they didn't know it and they were working on it and just weren't comfortable pulling the trigger on it, which is funny, but I mean that could be the case. That or they just
I would like to
finally,
think that they just don't like it and they just wanted to play their own game.
yeah, that
That's what
or
I'm
they
gonna
just
believe.
finally were like, all right, fine, we'll play goats. But I'm not sure.
Huge shout out to Jinmu though, because I think that he really does make that composition work. I don't think that not any team can make that work. You need a Farah that is as aggressive and as precise as him. Like the amount of direct hits
Direct
that
hits
man
are
was
huge.
getting, just
Yeah.
insane. And like a barrage every like 40 seconds.
Yeah.
And the way he was using barrages was super interesting to me because it was almost like a medium range barrage. It was very rare that he would get like right up in their noses and barrage like usually Farahs like to do. Instead, he would stand at a pretty safe distance, and because he's hitting huge targets, right? Like Ryan, Zarya, Diva. Sometimes he wouldn't even care like if the Diva was there, who just wait for the Matrix to go down, then bam, let's go. Medium range barrage, take 1 or 2 down. That's all we need, and keep going, keep the aggression up.
Mm-hmm.
I also wonder too if Atlanta didn't prepare as much for Chengdu because one, they're harder to prepare for, and two, they weren't a contender in the playoffs, right? So them thinking more of like, well, we need to beat Houston because if we beat Houston, they have a chance, or if we don't beat Houston, they have a chance to get into the playoffs, right? Chengdu doesn't. And it's harder to prepare for Chengdu. So I'm wondering if that played a factor in it as well. I mean, 2 back-to-back games, Chengdu and Outlaws, Saturday and Sunday. You gotta pick one.
Maybe. I am glad that they were able to come back and bring it with the Outlaws and not lose that spot. Against
Mhm.
the Outlaws, it did look like Atlanta was the superior team. They did lose that first map, but I think that that's just Atlanta. They lose the control map almost every time since they've started the league. So I've learned to expect it. Hopefully, it can improve on that a little bit, but their control map is definitely their weaker side.
Yep.
As
And
an
then-
Outlaws fan, I will tell you that not being good at control is your demise.
Yeah,
In
'cause
all
it's
game
something
fives.
you-
Oh, no.
Yeah, especially because it's the first game and the last, and like,
Yeah.
oof, if you're not good at control, that's a crutch, and that I think that's what happened to Atlanta. Going against Chengdu on 2 control maps was just a little bit too much to handle. If that last map had been something that was not control, maybe payload or a 2 CP, I think maybe would have won that game.
Yeah, and being good on control is really what I always said was the Fusion's strongest point last year. I mean, just being able, because the map 5 always goes to control, and you already play another one of those. I mean, being scrappy in control maps is huge. But we're going to move on to the stage playoffs because we are running short on time. But, oh, yeah. But I wanted to mention if the Outlaws would have went 3-2 and won against Atlanta, the Outlaws would have been in a tie with the Dallas Fuel, and we would have had a Texas
Better map
war.
differential.
Well, no, we would have
Super
had
tie.
a Texas war to see who gets into the playoffs. We would have had a Battle of Texas early, which would have been really neat, but it did not happen. All right, so moving into the playoffs next week, the number 1 seed is the Titans taking on Boston, the number 8 seed. The number 5 seed, Atlanta, will be taking on the loser of the Fusion and Defiant coin toss. Hold
Wait,
on.
can we
I'll
talk about that really
explain it.
fast?
Yeah, I'll explain it
Okay.
after this. The 3rd seed will be the winner of the Fusion Defiant coin toss, and they will be taking on the winner of the Shock Dynasty match. And then the number 7 will be the loser of the Shock Dynasty match versus NYXL, the number 2 seed. So 2 teams are tied. The Fusions and the Fusion and the Defiant have decided to just do a coin toss to see who has the higher seed, whereas Shock and the Soul Dynasty have decided to do a match to see who has the higher seed, and that's actually going to be going on tomorrow, but not going to be aired. But you were saying you wanted to say something about it, Mel?
Well, yeah, the Shock Dynasty decided to play the match because neither of them wants to play NYXL.
Yep. In the first round.
Right. Fusion Defiant are like, whatever, Atlanta, Shock Dynasty, like it's all the
Yeah.
same, right? Like
Yep.
flip a coin, we'll go
Yep.
for it. We'll save our energy. Shock and Dynasty are like, no.
Uh-uh.
I want to at least get to round 2.
That's beautiful. I love that they could do that. It's just like, let's just do a coin toss. And it's like, oh, okay. If you want, I mean, sure. Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, I think
why
I think it's cool that they're allowing the teams to choose either or, and
Yeah.
if both teams agree to the coin toss, they could just do that, save their players' strength, save their strategies, but then, when it really does count, like the Shock Dynasty, you do not want to take on NYXL first. Nobody does. So, yeah, I think it's pretty neat that they get the 2 different choices. Kind of bummed that it's not aired. I would love to see that. And it's kind of a
I
bummer
think
that
they don't
2
want to give the
teams are gonna
other
play.
teams
Oh,
any extra footage,
That's a good
right?
call.
Because it would hurt them if they aired their game against each other, because then other teams would have that extra footage to prepare for the next game, right?
That
Like,
is a good call. That is a very good call.
The losing team
Also
is going to come out
cost.
of that match, and they're gonna be all the other teams are gonna be like, dude, how much? What did they play?
right?
Yeah.
How'd
I
you?
mean, it looks like they didn't incorporate into broadcast schedule too. So from a cost standpoint, probably also that it's like, oh, they got to spin up a broadcast on Tuesday. Yeah.
I wonder what it'll be like. Like, are they gonna go to the arena and do this game? Like, that'll be like the weirdest atmosphere ever, right? Like,
Yeah.
just the 6 players on each team and nobody in the crowd, and like,
It's a good
One-
question.
Well,
like the
that's what they
coaches,
did.
you know?
That's what they
Maybe
did
they
for
put like
the
a crowd track or something.
that preseason-ish thing was all done there. I mean, that was all done there with no crowd.
but I think media was there and stuff, right?
I don't think so.
There's some people that I don't know. It's just so funny.
Yeah, I forget.
All the lights will be off, just except for the
Just the spotlights on them.
yeah.
Just Nanzer there in the crowd with popcorn.
I think they will probably have to play there though. I don't think they'll be able to just do it in their like little practice rooms, just because they wouldn't be able to guarantee coaches weren't talking to them during it, stuff like
You know,
that.
referees too.
So I
Yeah,
think
you're
they
gonna
will
have
have to do
the.
it there. But
I don't know. I was just picturing that and laughing.
It's pretty funny. Yeah.
so, do you guys think the Titans are gonna stomp Boston? Or do you think Boston has a chance?
No chance. As much as I think
Mm.
Fusions has the fire lit in him, I think that the Titans are just looking too tight right now, man. That team is super, super
Hey.
solid.
Yep.
And yeah, they remind me of what New York Excelsior was looking last season, and they're looking like the new and improved New York Excelsior.
Yeah.
I don't know though. I think. Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask Mushu what he thought, but go ahead, Mel.
I like to talk. I I think that Note has been looking good. Aim God's been looking good. Infusions has been looking amazing. I think if they can get all of their ducks in a row, I think Titans are going to come in overconfident. And I think Fusion or Boston has a chance to upset them. I think it's a small chance, but I do think that they have a chance to upset them. I think they can pull it together and throw a little bit at them that maybe they're not ready for.
Maybe. What do you think, Mushu?
So, I mean, I'm already calling Titans Soul in the finals. So I think Titans are gonna take it. I think they might lose control map, but at the worst, it's gonna be a 3-1 for Titans, in my opinion. And this is purely like what's my North Star for making these predictions, and it is how much does this team's Lucio set up the team for opportunities, right? Given that it's very scarce to have opportunities in general. How many times is the Reinhardt going to be not able to manage their shield or approach the point correctly? Or how many times is someone going to miss bubble? And so a lot of these opportunities are around the play of the Lucio. Lucio is usually the one on the wall riding in, is more exposed in the team, or is the core of the team doing rotations or getting to points to where they want to be. And I think more often than not, it's the Lucio or the Zenyatta getting picked off early on. And I think Kellex had a lot of times to where they live and die by Kellex, in my opinion, for Boston, right? He's the one who enables Fusions to be able to make those calls and then make those decisions on who they want to hone in on. And I really don't think Titans are going to give them many opportunities. And in fact, the other way, where it's like, I think Kellex will be, he will be targeted. I don't think he's the weak point of Boston. I think he's one of the stronger points of Boston, but he will be heavily targeted, in my opinion, by the Titans in order to make sure the Titans advance.
Yeah.
And I think Fusion too. You saw when Fusions dies, they fall apart.
Yeah, Dallas did a really good job of eliminating Fusions quickly in the first two matches, but I do think the Titans are going to win. Just if Boston does it, it's going to be real scrappy. It's going to be a 3-2, but I think the Titans definitely win. Unfortunately, the rest of the matches really aren't set, so it really isn't a good idea for us to really talk about it.
They play tomorrow, so we'll know the bracket.
Well,
tomorrow
okay.
night.
Mushu gave me his.
Yeah.
Who is in the finals for you, iPlay?
This one's a tough one. I was gonna say New York Excelsior and Vancouver, just because throughout the season, to me, they have the cleanest gameplay that I've seen. They just seem really, really together. Both of those teams. They have stellar players that are constantly making amazing plays. Not to mention that there are teams that don't fall under pressure very easily. So if I was to pick two teams, those two would be my guess. In an ideal world, though, ATL versus Vancouver, baby.
Nice. What about you, Mel?
First of all, ATL versus Vancouver is not even a possibility because they'll play
I was
in
already
the
figuring out.
semifinals if they play at all. But nice try. I think everybody wants to see a Titans NYXL match, right? Because they're the two undefeated teams. You want to see kind of who would take the cake there. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think NYXL is going to make it there. And I say that because I think NYXL, yes, has gone 4-0, but they've also had a fairly easy schedule, let's be honest. They've played a lot of teams that haven't really tested them. They've got Justice, Valiant, they got Boston Uprising, but Houston, as much as I hate to say it.
All right, but they were not like close matches. It was like, okay, New York is like sweeping the floor over here.
Right. And I do think there's a little bit of like New York just mentality with teams going in, right? They're like, oh, we're facing New York and like psyching themselves out to a certain extent. I don't know. I think I am more likely to say Titans versus Shocker Dynasty.
Okay,
I
okay.
think
Good
they
picks.
can
Good
take it.
picks.
Sorry, I took that out too long.
Yeah, I'm gonna say definitely the Titans versus NYXL. I mean, it just makes the most sense. And the only time I haven't bet against NYXL to win was in stage 4 of season 1 when I just said that they weren't good and everybody else said they were sandbagging. Still don't really know, but I mean, honestly, they've looked amazing. They're both undefeated. Their map differentials are out of this world, and I think NYXL is a little pissed that they're not number 1. So I think,
Well,
yeah, I
Feels
think
a
it's
little
going
bit
to be
shouldn't
that.
lose so
uncomfortable
many
for
maps.
that number 2 spot. It's like, wait, what?
Hold on.
We had some biggest takeaways in stage 1, but we're going to save those for when we're in the off season here because we've run a little bit long, but we're going to go ahead and start closing out. I'd like to invite everybody to join the pick'ems. We're going to be starting over again. The little information there. We have 2 people tied at the top. We didn't think about ties when we did our thing about giving away a sweatshirt. So we're gonna have to do an RNG thing with whoever ties at the top if there is a tie. So be wary of that. Jump in.
No, you should just give them the opportunity to either play a match against each other or flip a coin.
Yes. Oh my
As
1v1.
long as they
god.
mutually
Actually do
agree.
that.
1v1. 1v1 would be
1v1.
great. Yeah, that would
Yes.
be great. That
Done.
would be great.
Okay, if that happens, I will stream it. I would be
Will you
Will
totally
you
down to
cast
stream
it?
it for you
Will you
guys.
cast it?
We'll do it on this channel. Give me the stream key. I'll bring you guys on. We'll do a casual. We'll do a casual cast. We'll have some fun. That would be
Yeah.
awesome.
That'd be
For a
awesome.
sweater. Yeah.
That would be super cool. All right, well, the link for
Please
that
make a tie.
will be in the show notes. You can also find us on highnoon.gg. If you click at the top right under leagues, we are one of the sponsored leagues. We encourage you to follow us on Twitter at AlRecap. If you want to say something a little bit longer, send your emails to contact@alrecap.com. You can also find us squatting in the OmnicLab Discord. You can get there by typing discord.me/OmnicLab into your browser of choice. We stream live every Monday night. It looks like we're probably going to be moving the stream to 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time to help with some of the hosts, just being able to get there after work and everything. What else? Oh, YouTube. You could watch our stuff on YouTube now. It's usually available shortly after the stream ends, and we encourage you to watch us there. We've had a good handful of people watching us there now, which is cool. And you will get to see our scary, well, at least my scary face. Everybody else is gorgeous.
What do you
Lastly,
mean, Bob? You're a model.
hey man, the truth hurts sometimes, but luckily I have, come to terms with my appearance, so I'm okay. I'm okay.
Oh my gosh.
Lastly, you can definitely help us out by telling your friends about the show. Scream it loud as you drive down the street. Talk good or bad about us on Reddit. Whatever just gets us views. We're cool. We're cool with it. You can find us on all podcasting networks like iTunes, Spotify, whatever. If you can leave a review on one of those sites, that would be awesome, especially iTunes. We do try to read those on the show. If you want to support us further, you can go to patreon.com/AlRecap and join people like Thrill and Shazir in supporting the show and helping us bring you better content. All right, Mel, where can we find you?
I just first want to say that I appreciate all of our Patreons, no matter how high you are. But you can find me on Twitter at MelOverwatch, or you can find me on the Cavalry talking general Overwatch news.
How about you, I play?
You can find me on Twitter at iPlayGames. You spell that IPLAI Games. And why would you discriminate our patrons for being high, Mel?
Well, I wasn't. Bob was. He was only thanking Shazir and Thrill. I was just saying I love you all.
I'm just teasing you.
And Mushu, where can we find you, brother?
I am at MooshuBeef. It's MOO, like moo. That was supposed to be a cow sound, by the way. MOOSHU beef on Twitter, and yeah, I always I update it. I like the tweets. I like the Twitter life. Hashtag Twitter gang.
No, sweet. And before I tell you where you can find me, I also want to remind everybody the Omnic Lab game night is on the Friday the 29th. So it's a week from this coming Friday. Make sure and come. There will be no Overwatch League, so let's make it a big party. You can find me on Twitter at Blazzin_Bob. That's BLAZZIN_BOB. Thank you, everyone, for spending your night with us. Thank you for downloading the podcast. And just thank you for loving Overwatch. We will see you later.